he was one of my few students that listened to the teacher's advice. So.
And what's he doing today?
I'm waiting on some cake.
Oh, that's you. Now I'm looking at you. I didn't know it was you, Calvin.
Hey, Arjen, how are you? We haven't had our breakfast yet, but Arjen, I'm on the call. We've got my daughter Nadia, so we've got a few generations here.
Wonderful. Oh, there's Nadia waving. And is
Yes.
Nadia in Chicago too, or where are you?
Yes, we're both in the Chicagoland area.
Great.
And the three of us are trying to launch Chicago chapter CEI. And so once all of this is over, we're going to dig deeper, and we hope to partner with REI and some other partners to help grow us here.
Well, first you have to get through these elections, and then you can move on.
Oh, don't mention those. we have to live through this. You just have to watch us tumble.
I know it's not easy to remain hopeful, and when you live, I mean, I have a lot of family in the United States, so
I know that. Yes, yeah.
Keep in touch, but
yeah. Well, this effort here with caretakers reassures your faith in humanity, and the youth will lead to a more sustainable future. So.
Right, there's a lot of young people active and rising up and resisting, and that's needed.
Yeah.
Okay, people are trickling in. Sorry, icebreakers maybe ran over, so we're just gonna let them trickle in.
Jana, do you know if Isabel's been able to get online today, or is she still having to?
I haven't heard from her today. Yesterday she was watching on the live stream on Facebook. So I'm not sure. Maybe she's watching a live stream right now. I will ask them to check. Because
it would be fun to have Arjen and Isabel, back together, because they're the ones that met with Ed for a couple of meetings and that before I joined them and started this whole adventure that we've been on and so on and that. So it'd be a historical group photo again.
Hopefully, yeah, we can try get her on. I know the technology is tricky for us all.
Yes.
Welcome to everyone coming in. I can see the numbers slowly going up. It's gone from 20 up to about 80 now. So look, we're getting up there. Give it a few more seconds.
Let's see if we can hit 100.
Well, we had over 200 yesterday.
Yes.
So I hope we get the same numbers. Yesterday was a weekend though, so.
Yeah.
While we're waiting, I'm really impressed that it works with having so many on the conference and seeing you all on Teams, because only a couple of months ago it was not possible, right? I think that they started that only a couple of months ago. Before it was only possible with Zoom, as far as I know, but now it's perfect that Teams has this possibility as well.
Yeah, it's well, Teams is both wonderful and terrible at the same time. I think we're all learning that with this conference. But yeah, it's great that Teams has developed so we can have I think it's up to 350 people at once, and so far it's gone okay. So
yeah, I think it was only 8 in March, and April it was only 8. Yeah, they could not be seen at the same time. maybe.
Well, thanks to our great team leader, Jana. She's worked many of us through it step by step by step. So
Next year I'll do like a next virtual conference. I'll do a group call with everyone, and you can all do a tutorial with me.
okay. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm going to just chime in quickly and say, I second the kudos for Jana.
Thank you.
I don't know when she sleeps, but I'm very grateful for her help.
Yeah, no, we haven't had too much sleep in Julian in my household the last 2 weeks, but we're looking forward to a relaxing period in October. Okay, I think we are slowly getting everyone in here, so we will start off. So if everybody would like to turn off their cameras and microphones. Great. So
To you, Cindy.
myself and USEP are your chairs today. So I'll briefly introduce myself, and then I'll let USEP introduce himself. I'm Jana. I think you've all seen my face by now. I am a CEI alumni, originally from Ireland, now living in the Netherlands. And this is my 7th or 8th Caretakers Conference. You sort of lose track after a while. And I am joined today by USEP from Team Indonesia as my co-chair. USEP, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure, of course. Yeah, everybody knows Jana, of course, but I don't think everybody knows me. So I think I need to really introduce myself. My name is Yusuf Chandani, but actually people call me Danny. That's easy, and you can remember me very easily. I am from Jakarta, Indonesia, and I think this is my 4th CA conference I have ever been to, and I'm so excited to see everyone here. I will be helping Jana at some point to run this talk. Thank you, Jana.
Okay, great. So I'm quickly going to go over the house rules. For anyone who was here yesterday, they're exactly the same as yesterday. So please, if you're a participant or a delegate, turn off your camera and microphone. Please use the chat function to ask your questions and include the speaker's name if you're asking a specific speaker, or you can write general if you want to ask the whole panel. You can feel free to ask questions as the talks are ongoing. And all the questions will be posed to all of the speakers at the Q&A panel at the end. If you're watching on a live stream on Facebook, Instagram, etc., you're very welcome. Very nice to have you here also. You can also ask your questions on the chat functions or the commenting functions on those social media pages, and we will get them to the speakers. And with that, I think we're ready to kick off. So our first speaker, Arjen, is here. Some of you already saw his face. So Arjen was one of the original founders of CEI. So you guys heard from Isabel yesterday, and she mentioned Arjen as well. And it's also thanks to him that in 1986-87, the very first conference was held in the Netherlands. And Arjen, like myself, has a family affair with caretakers where when one of you is in, you're sort of all in. But aside from caretakers, he's also spent his entire life working on sustainability education, and he's currently a professor at Wageningen University here in the Netherlands. And he also holds the UNESCO Chair of Social Learning and Sustainable Development. So he's an incredible speaker for all of us to have here today. And with that, Arjen, I think I'll hand over to you, and you can hopefully share your screen. I will stop so you can start.
All right. Let me do that. You can see me on my screen?
Yes.
Great. Well, thank you so much for inviting me back to an organization that I helped create indeed a long time ago, and with some wonderful people like Isabel Abrams and Ed Raditz, and indeed Wayne Schimpf as well, and my mom, Joke Wals. It is a family organization, and it has the qualities of a family, and it still does, and that really pleases me. And I've seen some familiar faces already, and I might see a few more later on. We don't have a lot of time, so I'll try to be brief, and I usually take too much time. So I picked a topic for today, connecting in times of distancing, polarization, and urgency. And what role is there then for education in this world that is, it's somewhat maybe hard to be optimistic in these times. But we must be, because pessimism won't save the world. So let me just start. Okay. Oh, are we still there? No. You still see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, we see a dinosaur.
Okay, that's funny because I don't see the dinosaur anymore. I need to go make sure that I clicked on something. What happened to my screen?
We can see it.
Yeah, I know, but now I don't see my own slides anymore. Maybe, Jana, you know how to get that back. There was a reminder that I clicked away and then I got into something else.
So are you using two screens?
Okay,
Or one screen?
I'm okay.
Oh,
I'm okay.
you have it? Okay.
Yeah. So yes, the dinosaur. So I mean, I don't have to tell people who are listening to this and watching this that the predicament of our planet is not a good one. Even though since caretakers 1987, that's already a long time ago. But to go further back to 1972, the Man Environment Conference in Stockholm, or even further back, 1969, environmental education was born. Bill Stepp in the United States, kind of the founding father of environmental education. We've spent a lot of time working on environmental education, sustainability education, lots of environmental laws, legislation. We've seen rise, but Earth is not doing a lot better than say 50 years ago. In fact, you could say that unsustainability is still normalized, and sustainability is somewhat the counter trend, and that needs to reverse. We know all about climate change, the mass extinction, issues around migration, people having to leave their homes and their home countries to find better futures elsewhere, growing inequity, poverty. The picture is rather bleak, and you could say that while the diversity is rapidly going down, you could say that product diversity and consumer product diversity is rapidly growing. And so while we have lots of options and choices when we want to buy hair gel or toothpaste, we do find that 69% of the Living Planet report of WWF recently showed of species has disappeared in the last few decades, and this is of course also undermining the support basis of life on Earth, not just for other species, but also for humans themselves. Lots of these products end up in rivers and waterways. We know about this as well. And people need to kind of cope and respond and find new livelihoods in this kind of mess. And here we see an example of that in Southeast Asia, where someone is trying to make a living, probably in an old fisher community where they had lots of local knowledge about fishing and the different species, and knew something about the web of life. And could do this for generations, and now they need to fish literally for plastics that have some kind of value that they can bring to the market. So lots of local knowledge about plastics and the markets for plastic and recyclables, but this is not really the kind of sustainable way of living that we are looking for. Of course, it doesn't help that there's lots of confusion that is intentionally created around some of these issues. Lots of doubt about climate change, loss of biodiversity, the spread of COVID-19 at the moment is cultivated with the intention to have, when there is confusion and chaos, those in power or those who do not want change or in transition to a more sustainable world can benefit from that confusion to keep things the same and to keep catastrophes that we're kind of normalize the catastrophes that we are living in. So this is a new challenge for education. How do we deal with these? And this was not so much the case 20 years ago or 30 years ago when we started. So this is kind of a new, maybe the elephant in the room. How do we deal with post-truth, false information, polarization, people being set up against each other, and that is going to delay the urgent action that we need. So critical media literacy, where people come to understand science and have trust in science, is very important. And this kind of cartoon, in a cartoonesque way, sketches the world we live in today, where facts don't matter, and where somebody shouts, whoever shouts the loudest gets all the points, and the ones who carefully think things through and have a more nuanced way of speaking, they are not being heard or listened to. So this does raise a question about science and about education, also about higher education. Many of you are involved in higher education, where some of the smartest people on earth allegedly live and work and learn and study and do research. What is the moral compass of what guides us in as we study and as we innovate and as we find new technologies? And George Monbiot, who writes for The Guardian, he writes, "While we marvel at NASA's discoveries, we destroy our irreplaceable natural resources so we can buy pre-peeled bananas and smartphones for dogs." So we need to really reflect on how do we use education? What does it strengthen in society, and what does it weaken? What does it silence? And that also requires that we are very critical of what is happening and what is being taught, and that we also kind of question what I call the hidden curriculum of unsustainability, the kind of learning environment, schools, universities, but even communities that invite unsustainable behavior and makes it easy to live an unsustainable life, but difficult to live a sustainable life. And over the years, as I get older, I get maybe more radical, more critical. But I do find that more radical and critical approaches are urgently needed. I do believe that there's a very strong a business agenda, a neoliberal agenda that sees humans more as a commodity, as input, throughput, and output, and young people as people who need to develop skills and qualities and competencies to compete with each other in a globalizing economy where there are flexible workers and where they earn a living that they can spend on consumer goods, and the more they spend, the more they can consume, the more companies can grow, and this is eroding our resources, and it's also eroding the quality of the relationships between us. And so this kind of mantra of working harder, earning money, buying more things, and keeping going with the suggestion that happiness is just around the corner is totally unsustainable. It is a rat race that we need to somehow disrupt. And this is in a world that is very much run by big corporations who possess more wealth than many countries in the world, and in a way follow and monitor everything we do through the digital technologies that we are so dependent upon nowadays. So this is something we need to think about as we are kind of locked into our devices and actually, you might say we need to get away from screen time and move towards more green time. And this is something that we as an organization, caretakers and others need to be working on, because as these big corporations influence more and more how we think and what we do and what we buy and how we spend our free time, we also lose our democracy, our possibility to determine who we are, how we want to live our lives in a democratic society. By accepting the cookies all the time we basically give permission to be followed and monitored all the time. And that can lead to a world in which people get disconnected from each other and connected to material lifestyles that are not beneficial to everyone and certainly not beneficial to most other species and non-human animals. And here, this picture is just classic pictures of how the technologies distract us from developing the kind of wisdom that we need in order to live more sustainable lives. As E.O. Wilson, the famous biologist, says, we are drowning in information while starving for wisdom. So here's a challenge for our schools and also for our younger generations to but also not just for younger generations, because that would be too easy for people like myself to say, well, the younger generations, they need to change. Because people like myself living in a good part of Europe, we have enormous ecological footprints, and we are also responsible for much of the misery that is happening in other parts of the world. So youth is rising, that's good. Extinction Rebellion, Friday for Futures, but also the climate strikes. These are all signs of young people saying this is enough. We need to take matters in our own hand, and we demand that our education is preparing us for the world that we are already in, and certainly for the world that is coming, a climate changed world with more, as I already said in the beginning, with migration, increased poverty, inequality, and so on. So let me real quickly talk about how can we create a kind of pedagogy of hope in a climate and in a culture of fear. How can we remain hopeful, energized, and positive? Because if we only focus on awareness of how bad things are, it can lead to paralysis, to apathy, which is the opposite of what we want. Some of you might wonder, what is the Mazda doing over there? This is, I Googled this once, and I got that advertisement, and I was thinking, why do I get the Mazda advertising? And that's probably because I do a lot about boundary crossing, and I Google that word, and crossing over, and cross-cultural competence, things like that. So somehow crossovers in the advertisement connected me to Mazda. And this is what I mean when we accept cookies and when we Google, somebody is watching us and somebody wants to earn some money from watching us. So I'll skip this given the time, but the young children also in parts of the world like Vietnam in this case are worried about floods, about extreme weather events, about droughts, and they are worried about a climate changed future, and they too need to have more viable alternative futures. Somebody like Greta Thunberg is, of course, an example of a young person who takes matters in her own hand, has a voice, and is able to mobilize lots of people around the world. And I think caretakers of the environment is also another way of mobilizing youth. And I'm extremely happy that after all these years and hundreds of students and pupils, young people every year are affected in one way or another, and that the alumni that you have formed, all or many of you have developed personal lifestyles or even professional lifestyles and careers that are working on making the world a better place to live, much like Greta, who may be more prominently present perhaps, but doesn't diminish the kind of work that we all are doing together. So, okay, enough about the focus on economic growth. How can education serve people and planet rather than become an extension of the economy? How can we reclaim education to serve people and planet? That is an important question. And I'm going to skip this because that's too much. Kate Raworth provides a good picture, I think, the donut economy, and that shows that we need to learn to live within the ecological ceiling that is formed by the ecosystems around us. And while maintaining a solid social foundation with good health, good education, social equity, gender equality. And within that, we need to move away from a growth-based economy towards a regenerative and distributive economy. And the 17 SDGs, they kind of fit in this donut, with some more on the outside, more related to ecology and ecosystems, and some more in the inside, like quality education and peace and justice and reduced inequalities are more at the heart of the donut. And it is a challenge, and this is not so different from when we started as caretakers, to see things in a relational way, in an interconnected way. Here you see in the middle a bag of tea, and the question is then how does this bag of tea connect, for instance, to the SDGs? And you can see here kind of a life cycle analysis of how things are kind of sitting and nested together. And while we are very good in reducing the world into smaller pieces and in drawing lines and boxes between and making distinctions, we're not very good at seeing the world holistically and seeing connection and relationships. But this bag of tea connects to, well, some obvious ones: life on land, good health and well-being. We can look at the whole chain. We can look at how the tea bags, where the tea comes from, how smallholder farmers are connecting with that, but also how people are paid in the whole chain. And then you can even add things like gender, reduced inequalities. Everything is connected to the tea bag. And the question should not be what SDGs connect to my issue that I'm working on. No, the question should be, how does each and every SDG connect to my issue? That is the challenge. And if you don't see the link with gender, then that is your challenge. How does this tea back to gender? Because there's always a link. Okay, I'm about to finish. So we need a transition. We need to develop a new world, a new normal, not go back to the old normal. And the COVID-19, where people want to go back to the old normal, we need to really see if this kind of a disruption can lead us to a new normal, where we may be less dependent on fossil fuels and travel and flying, where we become more localized, more rooted in local communities, and where meaning becomes important, where we can green our schools, our green school grounds, where we can actually have a more circular economy locally, and we can create jobs that are meaningful, that are well paid, sufficiently paid, that have good healthcare, and so on. It is all connected, where there's democracy, and we see lots of these movements and niches all around us and all over the world, where we see, and this is a picture from Mark Beam, the World We All Want project, where you see in all these fields, whether it's spirituality and culture and governance or food, energy, localized forms of energy, localized forms of food, circular economy, and so on. And education, learning, and capacity building is critical. SDG 4 is one of those SDGs needed to help realize all the others. And that's why I continue to say education is critical in creating a literate, a critical, considerate and mindful world where people can learn from each other, with each other, where they not only learn to know and to understand and to do even, but also learn to be together, where also learn to take, to make change and learn to care. Learn to care is one of the critical qualities we will need in order to create a world that is more sustainable than the one currently in prospect. So that's it for as an input. I already went over time. I'm very sorry about that. So I very much appreciate your work, and I really like that you found a way to continue the conference somehow online. I think it's very impressive, the program I saw. And I'm kind of proud as an alumni myself of what is happening, and I hope it will continue. If there's one thing that's sustainable that it is caretakers, because it keeps on going without massive donations from big corporations and without being dependent on funding from specific organizations. It somehow is self-determined, somehow autonomously, independently continues to move, and that is very impressive. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Arjen. Thank you so much. And we're going to have some questions later on. But very quickly, I'm going to just switch back to slides.
Can you undo the sharing for me, or do I need to do that?
I think it's okay. I think I've taken over your sharing, have I?
Yeah. All right. Thanks.
Okay.
Hi, Karin. I just saw Karin for a moment. Good to see you.
Yes, Karin is. I'm just about to introduce Karin to all of you. So one moment. Hopefully this works. So our next speaker is Karin Dubsky. So Karin is here, I hope, and you can turn on your microphone and your camera there, Karin, while I introduce you. So Karin is a marine biologist, also an activist and a believer in citizen science. Karin is in charge of an organization called Coast Watch, which is a European-wide organization. She's also very active in the Irish Coast Watch branch. And yeah, Karin is here to talk to us about sustainable use of the coast and possible reasons where we're failing maybe on the Life Below Water SDG, which some of you are in an SDG group about life below water or discussed life below water today, and Karin is really an expert on these SDGs and where we are going wrong. So with that, I will hand over to Karin, and hopefully, Karin, you can share your screen. If you have, do you have a microphone on? Don't see you on my screen. Karin, if you're there, can you turn on your camera and your microphone?
I think she's muted.
Oh, Karin, can you unmute yourself?
Yeah, she's still muted.
So Karin, there should be a mute button somewhere for you to untick. I don't think I can do it for you, Karin. I think you have to do it for yourself. So there should be a bar with a camera button and a microphone button either at the top of your screen or along the middle of your screen, Karin.
Can you share your screen to show her how to access that?
It might be different. There's 3 different teams layout, so it might not be the same. That's the only thing. Karin, can you hear us? Can you write in the chat maybe if you can hear us? Otherwise, we can always. Okay, I can see the mute button on TikTok, but it's not doing any.
Try to share the screen so she can see where she can unmute her microphone.
Okay, I mean, yeah. No, Karin, we can't see you either. 1 second.
Yes, we can see her.
Oh, I can't.
I can see her. She's in the middle of my screen anyway.
Okay. Karin, can you also share your screen for us? Or try? I can try share my screen and show you where the buttons would be, but it might not be the same. I don't know, Karin, do you also... Ooh, I lost the call. Karin, do you have these buttons here, the camera and mute buttons, or they might also be in the middle of your screen here?
Yeah, she's saying her buttons are non-responsive. It may be something with her setup.
Okay. Karin, what we're going to do is we're just going to go to the third speaker and we'll come back to you, okay? Try exit the call and re-enter the call, and
Yeah,
we'll try again.
It says that she is outside the organization. That's what it says.
Yeah, that shouldn't be a problem. She should still have camera and microphone buttons. But in the meantime, we will go forward and go to Ms.Butet. So maybe Yusuf, you want to introduce Ms.Butet?
Sure. Yeah, I'm so sorry about that. I hope you can see me now. We're going to go to the next speaker, and her name is Butet from Indonesia. Butet is a pioneer for alternative education who initiated the first pilot school in the isolated and remote area in Indonesia. And the school is very popular. It's called Sekolah Rimba, or the Jungle School. Butet has received many international recognition for her work. And very related with us here is that Butet was one of the teacher participants in an environmental teachers international conference in 2001, when CEI Indonesia was officially established. And today, Butet will talk about indigenous people and how their diversity and ideas are the key to sustainable future. I hope Butet is here already. Butet, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
All right. Right. Thank you very much for coming. So it's really time for you to really deliver your thoughts.
Thank you for having me. So I just share, yeah?
Yes, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Oops, sorry. I lost my presentation. Okay. Okay, is it clear? Can you see my screen?
It's coming, I think.
Oh yeah. Okay, so
yeah,
then
it's coming.
I can see. Okay.
Yes, it is clear now. We can see that very clearly.
Yeah. So I have experience for 21 years with my NGO Sekolah Institute providing education for indigenous people. So this is a picture of my book. Yeah, the first days in the jungle when I visit Orang Rimba. Orang Rimba is the hunter and gatherer communities living in the rainforest of Sumatra. So this is my first day. I want to share my first lesson learned when I came there. The first time I saw they wearing loincloth, I thought they are primitive. Yeah, I was just graduated from anthropology back then, but I was still have a narrow-minded of thinking that indigenous people was very backward. But I spent my days there, and lucky me, because I spent day by day, I learned a lot that actually their loincloth is much more convenient and is a high technology and aesthetic as well compared to my clothes, which I was wearing just like wearing like Indiana Jones. I was so obsessed with Indiana Jones. I came to this community, and then I learned that when we chased by the bear, the one who can easily going through the jungle and run and climbing trees is when you wearing loincloths. And my clothes with my hat and my long trouser and backpack, and in my waist I have bottle, compass, and so many things, and knives. It's taken by all the pickle and by the trees. So this is my first lesson that actually they are very, very smart, yeah, and they confused looking at me. How couldn't I climb trees? I'm already very grown up, yeah. So I learned that clever or not clever is depend where you are. So we just have a different knowledge, not that the Orang Rimba is more stupid than us or the other way around. And the second lesson learned for me is I saw that Orang Rimba actually have their own education. They have their own elementary or kindergarten, even master and up to professor, yeah. And all of the knowledge that they have are already contextual. For example, 5 years old Rimba boy, they already know how to treat bites by cobra, for example, and they know hundreds of animals, hundreds of mammals, birds and reptiles. They are very knowledgeable. And so if I came there as an education facilitator and thinking that they need to learn calculus, they laugh at me. Same as if I teach kids in the city how to put a trap for a deer, for example, they will laugh at me. So contextualizing education to a certain community are very important. And I also learned the way they learn from their parents are from a method of playing, observing, and exploring. Yeah, I learned this from Professor Peter Gray, that it's different with people in the city where they used to be just in the class, so they imagining things. So this is also level of education that I mentioned before. When you are little, you learn how to catch a little animal. And when by the time you grown up, you learn how to catch a bigger animal with a bigger risk. Yeah. So the professor or the PhD, if I can say, is to climb honey tree. And that's the most difficult one for a boy. And you have a different education level as well for girls. And also, I learned that orang rimba, knowledge is not enough for them to cope with any problem that come from the outside world. When I came first time and taking out pens from my bag, they call pen as is evil with spike eyes, because every time they encounter people with the pen, they always have bad luck and always lost their land. Yeah, they often ask to sign on the paper or put their thumbprint on a contract paper that says they already look after the jungle and they deserve a present from the government, but it's actually saying that they agree to sell their land. So often they lose their land, and they hate this pen. Yeah. So when I come to introduce education or school, they straight away said that it's taboo. So it took me like 7 months just to be friended with them, and for them to accept that we actually need some kind of education that help us to cope with problem with outsider. So we learn also that local knowledge and knowledge from outside have to be hand in hand, and the knowledge that I brought has to complementing the one that they have, not to abandon them. So one day, in short, yeah, I was accepted, and we learn in the jungle while we are collecting fruit, or we put trap for animals. And one day when we are learning, we heard senso, because back then has so many senso in the jungle. Yeah, they are 3,500 people, but the loggers can be like 20,000 people all over in the jungle. Yeah. The jungle is 60,000 hectares, as big as Jakarta. So they asked me, we have already able to read and write, but why could not we able to stop the censo? And that's the turning point of me to establish Sokola. Back then, I was working with a conservation NGO, and then me and my other 4 fellow educators, we established Sokola that is focused only on education for indigenous people who lives in the jungle or in remote. We think that education should have given benefit to solve our problem, yeah, and it's related to the sustainability of the environment. So what is the point of having so many students if none of them can solve our life of problem? This is said by one of the late chief in the jungle. So this is all of their problem. They have so many problem, and they confuse, why couldn't we impose our law, customary law, to punish people from outside? And so they want to learn about law, about their rights, about how to combat all of this. Yeah, we call this method problem-based method, and we make our curriculum based on their problem. And we also believe that every indigenous people actually survive because of their knowledge, not because of government protection or because they know about conservation. No, they don't call it conservation, but they have knowledge that is incorporated in their life, and they believe that if I treat my environment like a fridge, like our fridge, we take what we need and we keep the rest in the fridge because we need it again tomorrow. So that's what it makes it protected. So I think every indigenous community is a professor in their own respective location. So basically, they are our gurus in many ways, in sustainable life. So this is my organization. We have been established 16 schools all over Indonesia, from Aceh, the very northwest, to Papua, to Asmat in the east. We already involve 100 volunteers and giving benefit to 15,000 people. And back again, so school or formal school often seen by indigenous people a school that teaches you how to live, because the more you learn, the higher your level of education is, the more possibility that you never come back home, and even if you come back home, you will feel alienated, and the education that you have is not relevant to the needs of your environment, and that's become a missing link and makes people even migrated to the cities, like urbanization, because our curriculum teaching just one kind of curriculum and uniformity, and it's more for city rather than contextualized. So what happened to all of these kinds of people who are not living in the cities? They need some kind of education that solve their problem in their daily problem, not education that is achieved in 20 years, because our education tend to prepare for our future, like our dream, like our goal, like sometimes 10 to 20 years. And by the time our future, we step to our future, the lesson that we learn today is not contextual or is not relevant anymore. So these kind of people need some kind of instant and vocational school and knowledge to combat their daily problem. And often we see people or indigenous people the way we see them with our own mindset, but it is actually very interesting to see how orang Rimba view us as a city people. They call our house is a cage. Their house in the jungle, if you see the house in the jungle, they don't call it in their mindset, it's not a house, it's a bedroom. And if you ask where is your bathroom, it's the whole river all over the jungle or around their house, and their kitchen also anywhere wherever they have the trap, the animal trap, they can just make their kitchen there. So their house is very complex and very rich. So they think we are very poor, and if they see our water tap, they call it like urinate water, while we have river. And they said city people life is very complicated because they are very hard to please, because they have too many things they want to possess, and so they will never be happy in their life. And our life is so weird because they think you always compete when at school and compete for jobs, and then when you get money you use it for mortgage and paying your bills, and then often city people killed by their own food. It's such a weird life. And so this is the fridge. I mentioned fridge before. This is the way they catch their animal. They use just a poison, but a natural poison. So fish just fainted and they just fish as much as they want, and they leave the rest, and so the rest can alive again. And they have like 30 kind of cassava or carbs in the jungle that they can harvest. This is trap for mouse or squirrel, and that's mouse deer. This is how they cook the animal. If they have over like too many animals, they make it, they how you call it, they not grill that, they smoke it, so it's preserved. And this is how you cook. On the left is your carb, is cassava or rice, and then water, and then on the right side is your your meat or your protein, yeah. And it took like 2-3 hours for you to wait until you can have dinner or lunch, because you have to collect firewood, you have to take water, a little bit walk, and you have to check your trap if you get game animal or not. This is just satay, and this is fruit and honey. This is the house that I mentioned before. They said this is bedroom, and the whole house is the whole forest. And this is all their possession, yeah. Compared to our possession as a city people, this possession on the right photos are so small, yeah, so little. And they are nomadic people, so they have to be able to carry everything when they have to move. So this is some of the custom. They have besasandingon, which is social distancing in Orang Rimba. So they already have this for 100 years. When they know that we do social distancing 1.5 meter, they look at it because they think it should be at least 20 meters. Yeah, and when you sick in the jungle, you also being quarantined, and they will feed you. But we also ask to sit or stay in the downstream of the river, because they believe disease come from upstream to downstream. Yeah, this is all some of their adats or their custom that is very into conservation. They have also rule for women and men. Yeah, this is very interesting because men has so many restriction, and they believe men has to hold their desire since they are little, because they believe men are very strong in, and if they don't have ability to control their desire, they can be a source of problem. But women are very welcome to follow their desire, because they believe women are very close to earth and they look after their children. The more fussy the woman, the more interesting they are, and the more protected the forest and their children. So this is also lesson learned from Orang Rimba, ya, 14 years journey to defend their forest. By filmmaking, they learn about their rights through the law course. They also learn how to make their own map, so they can recommend the map to the National Park Board. Now the National Park adopting their tradition or all of their conservation and zoning system, so they don't use zoning system that is adapted from America, yeah, or international. National Park in Jambi, in Bukit 12 National Park, are very contextual, yeah, very local, that adopting Orang Rimba customary law. And this is principle of us sekolah, yeah. We were asked how do we keep our vision and mission to make sure that our program is sustainable. But we were actually taught by them. We learn from our student and community. The first principle is to live in. All of our teachers have to live in the site for at least 2 years. We have to be able to speak their language, especially when we teach reading and write. We have to teach in local language. And a principle of being humble, yeah, we have to learn before we teach. So we believe humility, humus, and humble is come from one word, and that's very important, because if we want one community to be able to defend themselves and have their self-determination, we have to learn from them and give them like the authority to self-oriented themselves. Yeah. We also adapt to the local way of life as much as we can. Yeah, we eat whatever we want to eat. You don't have to be someone else, but for me, I love to try everything, so I eat whatever they eat. And we also respect native point of view, what we call it in anthropology, that emic is very important. It's not about being empathy, but you have to be able to respect what they believe as a truth. Yeah, if like the Orang Rimba, they believe that sun is swallowed by a giant every night, and then the giant vomit the sun again every morning. That's why it's come from left and then set in on the right. Yeah, and I cannot argue that, because otherwise they will be looking at the knowledge of their ancestor. I will just say, oh, according to your parents, sun is like this, but according to heliocentric concept, the globe is round, something like that. And this is our curriculum. Yeah, have to be started by assessment. Assessment is very important just to make sure that they really need education, because we believe that not every community in the world need education. It's like giving a computer to a place that has no electricity yet. Yeah, maybe not yet, or maybe not at all. And in basic literacy, it is very important to introduce not only letters, not only word, but you introduce their reality. When I teach, for example, rusa, ya, ruru es asa, it means deer. I will ask them, do you eat rusa? Yes. How often do you eat rusa? And they will say, yeah, once a week. When I was little, it's once a week. But that was 7 years ago. But now, not even once a year. And I will ask, why is that? Oh, because our forest shrinking. Why is that? Because people taking our forest. And why you just not defend your forest? Oh, because we are afraid. And I will tell, do you know that you have a right to your own land, your own forest? And they will, oh, we don't know. Oh, do you want to learn about your rights? Yes. So this is very important to start at the very beginning about their problem. Yeah. So I quote Linda Tuhiwai here, name the word, name the word. Yeah, we also learn about the phonetic research. So some of letters are come from Western. Yeah, we in Indonesia have our own letters, but because we are part of this globalization, part of global citizen, and we are part of the market, now we need to learn about reading and write in Latin. So when I found that people cannot differentiate P, B, and M because it's sounded from your labial, I will not tell them that it is a mistake. It's very makes sense, and we have to respect that. And by the time they already master reading and write, we come back to that. Yeah, it's like we're doing our exam. Do your the easiest one, and the most difficult one, do that later. And then at applied literacy, we include and involve all of the elders or the customary leaders to teach all the local skill, yeah, being a hunter, herbal medicine, many things, yeah. And external is all the knowledge that is relevant to them. If they living in the coastal areas, for example, I will not teach them about logging. But if they live in the jungle, I will not teach them about coral reefs. You might give them that knowledge, but it's not the main one. And advocacy skills is about how to access facilitation from the government and their rights. And the indicator is having local cadres to continue the work or their struggle. Yeah. And this is just one example of the Rimba curriculum. From the beginning, if you see all the red dots at the bottom and the green one, the red is Sokola Institute, us, and the green one is the community. And so by the time they can handle most of all, so that means we ready to leave. So this is just my some kind of conclusion that I want people to learn, maybe if you can get something out of this. So we think development paradigm is not always linear. Yeah, hunter gatherer, that does not mean we'll move into become like Jakarta or even New York people. Some of them stays like that. They don't want to move to another step. But even if they want to move, it's really not our business. They're the one who decide when and how. Yeah. And critical ethnography is very important because this is to understand that actually the meaning of success, the meaning of happiness, every community can be different. The goal of education for us in the city, for example, to get a very high education and very high salary with a huge house, but some people might have a different kind of being success, and this has to be adopted. So I don't think all of the indicator and at SDG, Sustainable Development Goals, are really operational to every communities in the world, yeah, especially to indigenous people. When you say under $2, or when you say your floor has to be shouldn't be just soil or many things, yeah, or people doing hunting is actually work. So working and learning also have a different concept in different communities. For orang rimba, going hunting is a school. For people in the city, orang rimba looking at kids in the city going to school and very rare to smile and having a lot of homework and less time for playing. It's kind of work. It's kind of hard work. So this is also something that we need to understand. So being contextual is very important, and also taking a stand on the community is very important. So I believe that the resilience of a country lies in its smallest community, and the community resilience lies in its natural and cultural potential, and to let them become themselves and to support them to love themselves and even learn from them, uh, it will make them even more independent. Yeah, that's the self-determination means. And when they are very strong, and then the country will be strong, and then the whole world will be sustainable. We should have learned from the indigenous people because their lifestyle is proven sustainable. So this is
Mrs. Butet?
yeah, it's finished.
I'm
This
so
is
sorry.
one of my students, and this is just from drone, our jungle school hut in Jambi.
Ms. Butet?
Yes.
I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry for this, but we don't really have much time. So this is really interesting. I think we really have to wrap up the time. So we'd like to
No,
cut.
this is
But
my
this is
last
the time,
one.
right?
I'm finished.
Oh, thank you. Right. Thank
Yeah,
you. Sorry.
it's okay. Thank you, Danny. I have to stop screen. Yeah, wait.
All right. Thank you very much. But
Thank
we
you.
don't really have time. Thank you very much for that. But that's really inspiring, and thank you very much for your time. Right. I think we're gonna carry on working on the next one. The next speaker is going to be Jeff. Okay, I hope Jeff, you are here. I just want to introduce some information about Jeff for a minute. That Jeff is from Chicago SF, and he's known for his fusing of different culture into his cooking and use of sustainable resources. Jeff is also an urban farmer and encourages youth to know where the food is coming from. He started a movement called From Hood to Table with the goal to bring food to the hood and so across to all of black farming and farmer. For your information, Jeff is not going to show you any slide presentation. So listen very carefully to the explanation. Jeff, are you here?
Yes.
All right, it's your turn now.
How's everybody doing today? So
thank you.
The whole idea of sustainable food. First of all, you gotta know that when I try to learn to understand something, I try to understand it by the root, by definition. So the definition of sustainable food is providing a service, food security, nutrition for future generations without compromise.
Jeff, sorry, just 1 second, really quickly. Jeff, we can only see your lower half of your face. So if we could just see your whole, yeah, much better. Yeah.
Sorry.
You were just looking at your beard, so thank you.
Sorry.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah. So the whole idea of food sustainability is you're delivering a service, food nutrition security to for future generations, so that they never fail. With that being said, if you start a farm, or if you start a farm and you have kids, your kids take over the farm. They can sell that exact same product that you sell without fail, without any blemish, without any shortcomings, whatever the case may be. What got me into farming, I'm a private chef in Chicago. And during COVID, I started doing digging into my family tree. And I found out that on my father's side, we had farmland down in Arkansas. And my grandmother, she grew up as a sharecropper with her mother. And my grandfather also owned a farm in Mississippi, which got me to thinking I have a pretty big backyard. So I was like, food goes hand in hand. What I did with my private cooking, it goes hand in hand with food sustainability. It helped me. It number one, it helps me out with sourcing my own food, knowing where it comes from, and being able to say I could tell a story to whatever I put on your plate. So if it's a bell pepper, if it's a jalapeno, if it's a piece of beef, I can tell you this piece of beef came from Mississippi, from a black farmer that grew it this way. It's grass-fed beef. Or I can tell you this bell pepper came from my backyard that was grown 6 months ago. So the whole idea of being able to feed your family, being able to feed your friends, being able to feed the community is very impactful. Also over COVID, I started my own garden in my backyard. I have 18 8 by 4 foot beds. All have various types of vegetables, products growing in them, produce growing in them. I also started a community garden, and I'm also partnering with a middle school, Oakland Elementary in Waukegan, to teach kids how to be sustainable, how to grow their own food, how to go home and say, hey, Mom, this is a pepper I grew, taste it. Because in reality, I have 2 small kids. When I first started, they ate vegetables, but not too much of a variety. So when I gave them the opportunity to grow and see them progress and how the beans grow and how the strawberries grow, how the okra grows, they want to taste the okra. Or just wipe it off and bite it. So when kids see that that natural progression of how food is made, and they have that pride and sense of they grew that. So that also falls into food sustainability, because when you teach yourself how to grow, and you teach other generations to grow, it can continue to grow on, and you can be less susceptible to depending on the supermarket or depending on anything that has to be outside of your home, making it more of a closed circle. You can different examples of food sustainability practices. You can composting that helps with decomposition of your gardening and help your soil to get rich. You can recycle. You can use cover crops if you're doing major gardening. It keeps the soil nice and fertile for the next couple years. You can do no-till gardening, which is a gardening method that involves no digging. All you have to do is just prepare the land accordingly, and you can do whatever you have to do to have successful growth. It's the lack of knowledge from my perspective. I grew up in the city and I moved to the suburbs. So as a people, I found out that once you learn how to, we were once sustainable. We had farms. We were very in the agricultural field. But once certain things transpired in America, it shied away from it. We shied away from it, and then we became more dependent on things that we don't need. So once that happened, I figured I had to do my part and change and try to educate and try to help as best I can as far as showing how to grow, putting in free garden beds for people if they want one, maintaining my own gardens to show you this is very easy to do with a little bit of work, obviously, but it's not something that's not attainable. Growing your own food, knowing where your food comes from, is power, and that's a power that you can control. You can also teach, and that's the biggest thing. My mom always said, if you're tired of getting what you're getting, quit doing what you're doing. So if you're tired of getting store-bought food, you're tired of feeling certain ways, sick, you're getting headaches all the time because you're eating this and processed food, then the alternative way is to, open up your own farmer's market if you can, or just start growing vegetables or going to farmer's markets, whatever the case may be. Just get out there and get the knowledge that you need to be sustainable as far as growing, teaching people how to grow, and growing yourself. That's the ultimate part, growing yourself and learning how to use these tools to better yourself and better the world is the most powerful thing. So it's not like I said, it's not something that's not attainable. It's something that you can do. Like I said, I grew up I'm living in the urban city, so I'm an urban farmer. So I'm doing it the best way I can. And just imagine if I urban farm and I have neighbors urban farm doing the same thing. A grocery store wouldn't be no need. It wouldn't be a need for, I can trade peppers for cucumbers, whatever the case may be. But you can build a bartering system to the point where you're more self-sufficient. You're building relationships with your neighbors. You're strengthening the community, and you're providing jobs and equity for your community to build upon and ultimately thrive and be the best. So when it all boils down to it, the best way to be knowledgeable, the best way to go about it is to get to it. It's not hard. It's not difficult. You go out there and plant a seed. The seeds, they will grow. They definitely will grow with care, with watering. Everything that comes with it. But it definitely will grow, and from there you'll feel accomplished. You see a seed grow. Like, oh man, I planted this bean 2 weeks ago, and now look at it. You're harvesting 2 or 3 pounds of beans, depending on how many you plant. But it's just a good feeling, just knowing where your food comes from, knowing that you did this, you can continue to do this, and there won't be any discrepancies as far as, well, I think this may be sprayed with pesticides, or I think this is none of that. So yeah, that's pretty much it. I pray and hope everybody that that you just continue to learn as much as you can. Always ask questions. No question is a dumb question. And get out and connect with Earth. You're getting back to your roots, getting back to knowing how things work, the cycles of this, cycles of that. You see more birds, you see bees, you see trees. It's a beautiful thing. So just go out there, plant a seed, and you definitely reap the benefits and get good rewards from it.
Thank you so much, Jeff.
No problem.
Great. So Jeff's going to hang around. I hope you still have time to hang around for the question session.
Yes.
So we just have one more talk, guys. So I will quickly introduce you to Vildana. So in the meantime, Vildana, maybe you can turn your camera on, and I will get us set up here. Oh, or maybe not. Maybe my computer is going to have a meltdown. Hold on a second. In the meantime, I'll quickly introduce you to Vildana. So Vildana is a very prominent member of CEI Sweden. And Vildana is also a teacher. So Vildana teaches, as Dan would have called them yesterday, the pre-caretakers. So people who are in primary school education. And for Vildana, it's super important that the Sustainable Development Goals really become a way of life as opposed to something that you have to teach. It's an active thing that students should be doing all the time. So I'm going to quickly try and get your slides up, Vildana, correctly. And hopefully doesn't freak out. Sorry, one moment. Oh. Okay, hopefully we are working. Can everyone see your title slide now? Is that working for everyone? Yeah?
I can see it.
Okay, great. Vildana, start off. Go ahead.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Jana. As Jana told you, my name is Vildana, and I work as a teacher in Sweden. Jana, next slide, please. For me, the Sustainable Development Goals represent a way of living, and this is something that I want to teach my students. We talk about the SDGs really early on during the school year, and we talk about how they are all connected to each other and what do they mean for us locally, and what do they mean globally, and how can we work with the SDGs in our classroom, and do we do it all the time or just once in a while? I want to make my students, my goal is to make them understand that everything that we do is part of the Sustainable Development Goals, and that all the subjects that we teach are interdisciplinary, and that's the way of teaching for a better future for us all. Thank you. Jana, can you please change slide?
Yep. Is it updating?
Yeah, thank you. One way of teaching the SDGs for me is teaching through doing action. My students get to go and collect garbage in their local surrounding around the school, and make different projects, movies, for example, through iMovie, and then send it out through different social media like Facebook with a message that they put together themselves. They do be hotels, as they call them in Sweden, and cooperate with local organizations or national organizations. We ask or invite different local cooperations to come and show us what they do around the SDGs and how we can cooperate with them and act together for a better future. And each time they come, we give them a present in the form of a certificate and seeds for flowers to spread around in our surrounding to help the bees and other and butterflies. Thank you. Yeah, next slide. Another way of teaching SDGs is to try and find solutions and try to see what's happening. So learning by doing. Here you can see my students mixing different ingredients to make, I don't know, bubbles, and what's happening with the chemicals, making their own tables for their computers when they're working, trying to see what's happening with the molecules with color, and how to work with light. So learning by doing and action. That's the solution as far as I can see with SDGs. Thank you, Jana. Can you take the next slide? Another way of working with the SDGs is to allow the students to use what they find to allow them to take their own initiative in their learning. Here, my students found chestnuts. We brought them to school and we planted them to see what's going to happen. Are they going to grow, and how are they going to grow? So we planted them. They started growing real fast. They got to be a quite big plant in just a few weeks, and we wanted to do something with these small baby trees. So we cooperated with the park unit in the municipality and asked them to tell us where to plant them to do something good for the environment. And when we did that, the municipality gifted the students certificates and entries to different museums as a thank you for their initiative. Next slide, please, Jana. Another way is we're talking about how to reuse different materials. Here we're using different jars to make candle holders, to develop different sort of games and storage for the games. We're using different materials for decorations when celebrating different traditions. You reuse the material around you. That's a message that I try to give my students when acting for a better and greener environment. Jana, next slide. When we're talking about different processes in the environment, we use different material in our surrounding. So the apple represents earth when we're talking about the core of the earth. So and then we're using a different sort of material in the forest to show how different animals and plants are connected to each other. And if one of them is lost, then slowly and surely the others are lost too. We're losing them. We're talking about cells and molecules, what's happening to our cells. And when we're talking about that, we have to actually let them feel it, what's happening to our cells if we put plastic around our bodies or hands, as you can see in the picture. By doing that, the students can feel the process and can talk about it and take action against it. Thank you, Jana. Next slide. There are different processes that we are studying, and by doing that, we are also aware of how we are affecting the nature. Here we're looking at butterflies, from a larva to a butterfly, and we're releasing them. When we do this study, we're also making different kind of material so that we can affect the people around us, like the local politicians. And the material is used to be part of an exhibition in the city hall, together with other students in our school and in other schools, to make the local politicians aware of the problem and how we together can solve it. Next slide, please, Jana. One way of working with SDGs and how to take action is that I show my students what I can do and what I'm willing to do for our future, both locally and globally. And I have to show them, I have to be an example for them. And I've done this so far by being part of an exhibition for the UNDP Sweden. I've published articles in a national magazine for teachers and people working with science, well, educators working with science. I've been cooperating with television here in Sweden with different kind of projects around programs made for students in compulsory school. I've been meeting politicians, both local and national. I've been holding seminars at the university in Malmö, and I've also studied my master's and published my master's thesis. By being an example for my students, I inspire them to do and act locally to solve the global problem, yeah? And when I talk to my students about this talk today, they wanted me to ask you what you're doing for our sustainable future. Last slide, please, Jana. And I would like to thank you all for listening, and thank you, CEI Indonesia, for inviting me to hold this short talk.
Thank you, Vildana.
Thank you.
Okay, I'd like to invite all the speakers to turn your cameras back on. I'm sure you guys saw already in the chat, unfortunately, Karin is kind of in the middle of rural Ireland, so she's not actually able to get on, but what we're going to do is post her presentation afterwards. So in the meantime, if maybe Arjen, Vildana, Jeff, and Butet could turn on their cameras, and I've got a list of questions to ask you guys. I know, Arjen, you're in a hurry, so I'm going to ask you your questions first. If that's okay with everybody else. So, Arjen, one of the things that people were wondering in the chat is, do facts matter in the climate change debate? Or is it really all about rhetoric?
Absolutely. I think the climate science, and this is the same for the biodiversity science, you know, hundreds, thousands of scientists from all over the world have been doing research on climate and on biodiversity, have been monitoring the changes over a long period of time. and have provided such a huge body of evidence that runaway, human-caused climate change is happening, and that one single species is responsible for this by burning fossil fuels in just over 100 of years that have taken millions of years to be formed, and then we send it up in the air in no time. That those are facts, and those facts speak very loudly. And when science is being undermined and trust in science, of course, science is also, good science is also able and willing to look critically at itself and its own results and how it's done, and that's continuously evolving too as a process. And sometimes we must accept that decision makers have to make 100% of the decisions with maybe 50% or 90% of the information. And I think good scientists are also able to say that things have changed and that new insights emerge. But that's not a sign of weakness, as some people would like us to believe. It's a sign of strength. That's the kind of reflexivity that we need in society and in science, and the politicians need to do that too. They must be strong enough to say what we thought was sustainable back then, given the knowledge that we had back then, turns out to be less sustainable today than we thought, because of new information, new knowledge, new information. So facts do matter. And when we start mixing up facts with myths, it becomes difficult for the public to distill between what is science-based and what is opinion-based. And what is, we always need to look underneath the assumptions and the agenda that's behind this to avoid that we are being manipulated or that science is drowned out. And we do see a moment, a kind of post-truth era, where there are forces in society that have a great interest in undermining trust in both science and governance, which leads a lot of people to resort to conspiracy theories, or people wondering, throwing their hands up in the air. Well, when the scientists don't agree, for instance, then I'm just going to continue my life. This is a very dangerous response. So facts do matter, and quality science. And I also must really the talk from was it Shabina? Or the talk from Indonesia earlier. Yeah, I'm sorry, maybe I'm missing the names here, but it is so important that we recognize that there are multiple ways of knowing, and that scientific ways of knowing is just one way of knowing, and local knowing and indigenous ways of knowing are equally important. And I think we need certainly in our Western way of thinking, we need a tremendous upgrading of indigenous and local ways of knowing and understanding, especially the more relational way of knowing and being, where science, I think, can learn a lot also by bringing in not just what we tend to focus on also in social sciences and in educational science, on the cognitive and the rational way of thinking and knowing, and the kind of logic of causal thinking. We need to complement that with more emotional, embodied ways of knowing. And I think there are all kinds of arts-based methods and approaches that are emerging, and lots of universities are creating.
Some of those are going to be used this week, we hope. I hope that'll happen at the workshops. I'm just going to, because I know you're.
Yeah, and I also want to, like Jeffrey was one thing about Jeffrey before I sign off, the local farming and the connecting schools and children with food and understanding of food and connecting with the land and understanding how food in a way the way we eat and the way we cultivate food is kind of a microcosm of a more sustainable world. So I'm really pleased that also in strictly urban environments, connecting with food and creating community gardens and working with local farmers and having restaurants connect with that, I think is extremely powerful. I just wanted to thank him for that.
Thanks, Arjen. And Arjen, there's a couple more questions. So anyone, if your question doesn't get answered, what we're going to do is send them to the speakers because we're kind of low on time, and we'll get them to write an answer, a short answer for you, and give it back. So if you don't hear your question, don't worry, you will get them answered, hopefully. So Ms.Butet, there's a couple of questions for you. One of them is it possible to have a curriculum for Indigenous communities that fits their life, but also provides the knowledge that they require to be able to flourish in the environment, while probably a central government wants one strict type of education for the whole country? So how can you kind of fight against a government system that's built one way to have a curriculum that suits these people?
Thank you, Jenna. It's been happening actually. Like we in Indonesia, we have curriculum 2013 that is applied everywhere, and it's been a bit difficult for us, Sekolah Institute, to collaborate with the government because they think under 15 years old they have to go to formal school with a certain like particular curriculum. They have uniformity of what sort of skill that they have to acquire. But all this time, a lot of communities, a lot of NGOs, and even community of literacy also have alternatives in doing this. So to contextualize the material with the target of the curriculum, so you can actually always able to do things that is related to your area. Yeah? I knew some school that can make it as a apa ya namanya, like a you do the curriculum and the national exam only in the last 2 months of 1 year, and the first 10 months you just learn about yourself, about your problem, because in the end what you report to the government is the national exams and the report from the teachers. So you can actually playing a little bit with that. So as long as if your target is not to get HD, like high distinction or 100% right answer, as long as you get the standard 60 or 65, it's not so difficult. So many teachers said if our standard is only 60, 65, you can actually do that. Not such a hard work. But so many schools try to be the best, and so they kind of have to I'm sorry to say, manipulate the students. So the student become object, not the subject. Object from doesn't know to know, object from low mark to highest mark. So their school have a best rank, yeah, at the area. So all the parents can send their school there, like competition to go there. And when they have a good mark, they also get better subsidy or money from the government. But the school who really care about the community, and the school who build the ecosystem of the school. Ecosystem means include their parents, include the leaders from their area, and include the natural and the social culture aspect from the area. They will build a very strong benefit and a strong community. And this is already proven in many schools. Yeah, I can say school in Jogja, Sekolah Salam, and some school in Bali and in Java, in Central Java, already shown that. Same as Sekolah Rimba as well. We don't really we don't use curriculum at all. But this is also interesting because after 8 years, because I was called by the Department of Education and asked me to share our curriculum, and I recommend this the curriculum that is right for Indigenous people because they don't have to do the national. And they said, Butet is too expensive, and how can we measure the success if everyone has different curriculum? And then after 8 years, they call me up again and they said, oh, Butet, I think you are right because all of our schools for Indigenous people, they all left behind. and we want to learn more about your approach. So we've been working together with the government now. It's been happening the last 3.5 years. So we kind of try to meet halfway.
Okay, awesome. That sounds great. Okay, so I also have a question for Jeff. So there's a couple of people wondering what the best thing they can start growing in their back garden is. So the question is from someone from Sweden. So they said the climate's similar to Chicago, but what things would you advise these young people to grow?
I would say start off with some lettuces. Lettuces, leaf lettuces such as romaine, red romaine, any leaf lettuce right now is good to grow. It's a cold. This is a fall growing season, so
Okay.
any leafy lettuce, carrots, okra, spinach, greens.
Okay,
That's about it. Yeah,
that's a good start for everybody.
yeah, for sure. It's a good
We
start.
have another question as well. So how do you work with schools? Like, how does that process happen? Like, did you just walk into a school, or and what do you do with the kids in school? I think
Okay,
everyone here
so-
would love to have you in their school.
Oh, for sure. So right now, what I work at a school, Waukegan High School, and I approached the principal of Oakdale High School, who's a friend of my wife's. She grew up in Waukegan as well. So I wanted to see if I can start a program showing kids how to grow their own food and market their own food eventually. We don't have that growing up in urban areas as much. The lack of knowledge as far as schooling, and the lack of knowledge as far as gardening and fresh fruit and vegetables is very scarce. If you go to a more inner city, you will definitely see food and liquors on every corner. You won't see a fresh grocery store anywhere until you go to the suburbs, and then you see a Whole Foods or whatever the case may be. So I'm trying to bring that same Whole Foods quality, non-GMO food to the hood. So from hood to table, I'm trying to bring that whole farm table aspect. We're trying to show you how to cultivate that in the hood and bring that knowledge to the hood for the kids to take off and do what they want to do with it.
I see Arjen has to go, but if you guys just hang on. Well, Arjen, feel free to go. Thank you so much. But I do have some questions for Vildana, so I'm just going to ask those and then we'll finish up. I know we're super over time. I'm really sorry, everyone. So Vildana, there's a couple of questions, but one is, you're inspiring and educating these kids when they're really young. So it's like we said earlier, they're pre caretakers age. So do you find that can even have more of an impact when you educate them at this really young age, rather than even when you get to high school or university? Do you find educating them at that young age kind of makes a real profound difference?
Yes, I do actually, because when you are a bit older, then you're studying this more like a subject. But when you're younger, you're teaching it by doing, and you have more. I think you have more room to explore with younger students in a different way, in a more basic way, and they are also in the age where they can affect their parents and older generations when they talk about what to do with their garbage, for example, and how to behave when outside and not throw trash around. And I think that younger kids have more guts to stand up for themselves than when we're older. We're a bit more shy when we're older. So if I teach them that when they're younger, they also get stronger in their beliefs and becomes a way of living, not just something taught as a subject.
Okay, great. And I suppose one more question, and maybe also, like Jeff, maybe you also want to weigh in on this one. So, and obviously with young people, you find that it's quite hard, I think, to get young people away from their screens. I mean, especially now with COVID, I mean, we're all behind our screens all the time, but how do you find that? Like, how do you get kids to go out and garden or to go out and do a project instead of on their phones the whole time? How do you guys find that? Maybe Jeff, do you want to go first?
Sure. Well, for me, it's easy. My personality, I'm real goofy, silly with the kids. So I believe I'm more towards their age. So me saying it as opposed to somebody that's their parents' age, you know, they'd be like, oh, I don't want to go out there. So I try to make it as fun as possible. I try to tell them, a lot of kids in the community, they're looking to how to make money. So I tell them, you want to make money, we can print money right now. And that's by going outside and planting these beans and planting these seeds. And once you plant these seeds, I can show you how to sell these seeds. They sell the product to the community. Therefore, you have a job and a skill set that you can now you obtain over a course of a summer. So that's once I break it down to them like that, and just tell them it's fun. I don't need your whole day. I'm not saying stay out here the whole day with me. Just give me a couple hours. You can play in 2K all day if you want to. But for right now, give me 4 hours. I'll show you how to do this. We'll knock this out. And you go ahead about your day. Then come back in another couple of days and we'll do it again. And when I give it to them like that and break it down, they're like, all right, we're going to see what Jeff's talking about. And we'll go over there and see what his garden looks like. And for me to have a garden in the neighborhood that I have it in, and when they see it, they're like, man, you wasn't playing. You're really doing what you're doing. So they get more interested in that. So I just will remain even more like that. So just giving them options and not trying to take up their whole day. Just like, no, hey, look, it's an option that if you want to make some money or if you want to learn how to grow better food, come this way. So it works.
Sounds like you didn't have too many challenges. How about you, Vildana? Have you found it tricky with your students, or are they young enough that they're not like totally enslaved by their phones yet?
I think it's a mix of both, actually. But I do it by going out with them and leaving my phone and my computer behind me. Yeah, I go out playing with them and spending time with them. So I show them that I can live without my phone and my computer, I guess. Okay. Also, I think that students today, even younger ones, are more aware of the way we're living today. Right now, I'm working with my students comparing society from 100 years back and society today, and they got to look at different pictures and compare. And some of them actually talked about that people looked calmer 100 years back, and they were reflecting about how computers and internet is affecting their lives. And when asked if they got to choose to live today or 100 years back, there were actually some that said 100 years back because they were calmer, they didn't have computers, there was no stress. So I think that our young students are actually more aware than we think that they are, and they're onto a solution already, I think. But it's exciting to be a part of this and see what's going to happen in the future, I have to say.
Okay. Well, on that note, I suppose it's time for all of us to get out from behind our screens. So thank you so much to all of our speakers and everyone who is here today. I know we missed some questions. I know we were over time, but we will get answers to all the questions. We'll send the speakers your questions, and hopefully in a few days or maybe a week or so, we'll get them up online for everyone to look at. So I just want to say thank you again, everyone, for being here. Thank you so much to all of our speakers. Thank you to Danny, my co-chair. And we'll see you all tomorrow morning or afternoon or evening at the same time, and looking forward to it. So we'll see you all tomorrow. Thank you so much. Okay.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you very much.
Thank you again. Tomorrow, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Terima kasih banyak ya.
Iya.
Maaf tadi saya potong sedikit.
Emang udah pas. Aku kayaknya malah kelewatan waktunya.
Salam kenal dari saya.
Salam kenal juga, Dani. Terima kasih, Torik.
Sama.
Halo Kak. Halo Kak. Keren banget.
Keren ya.